Howdy, it's Backwater J. Now, you may have noticed I style myself a multimedia artist, and while yes, that's a bit pretentious, I have yet to come up with a better term for the patchwork quilt of content I put out. In that spirit, I'm trying something new with this video, by which I mean something I actually have a good deal of practice with, but haven't put to video yet. For those of you who follow Roleplay 101, you may remember the first episode where, as a thought exercise, I built a character from the ground up. If not, you can click the little gray box in the upper right, and watch that if you want to get some background. Well, I'm pleased to say a campaign has opened up and given me a chance to actually play Foxglove, and so to commemorate my long-awaited return to in-person gaming, I decided to purchase a custom mini from Hero Forge. Let me be clear, I am not sponsored by Hero Forge, or in fact anyone, but if you're looking for a mini that's just what the doctor ordered, I encourage you to check out the broad range of character creation options. They're not cheap by any means, but given the time and money I put into cutting apart and cobbling together minis, I'd say they're well worth the expense if you're as particular as I am about representing your character on the board. That out of the way, on with the show. I'm going to try a trick taught to me by a friend and lightly glue the mini to this battery cap. He actually used wine corks, but I drink so little wine I don't have any on hand. This will give me somewhere to grip the mini where I'm not constantly smudging paint. Once that's fully set, it's on with my standard routine. First, the black primer. Now you may ask why black primer when the mini is already black. Well, two reasons. First, the mini is glossier than I'd like. The areas I tend to leave unpainted are small gaps which would be in shadow, so flat black makes far more sense. The other is far more pragmatic. Your paint will stick far better to a primed surface. A note on brushes. I tend to have a heavy hand, so to counteract that tendency, I'll use fairly fine brushes. It keeps me from over-applying my paint too much. I do several coats of primer, allowing each one to dry fully in between. The general idea is you want the mini fully coated with none of the original finish shining through. Obviously this is easier on a lighter colored material, but I'll do my best. Once the primer is done, my method is to work from the inside out. In other words, you want to think in layers. Those of you who have worked with graphics programs such as GIMP know what I'm getting at here. Basically, the thing that is overlapped the most is the first thing I paint, working my way to the very outer layers. The reason for this is simple. It's far easier to goof and get paint on a protruding bit of plastic than one that's recessed. And those protruding bits will be painted over, so usually no harm, no foul. That said, I start with the eyes. Though it's really hard to see unless you get super close, I try to leave the pupils black, but apply a spot of gloss to make them somewhat shinier. Next comes the iris. I'll mix paints until I have the color and sheen that I'm looking for and carefully apply it in a circular motion around the pupils. Foxglove is doing a side glance here, so in a way that makes my life easier. Next comes the whites of the eyes. I'll overlap enough of the blue to create proper eye proportions. Final step for the eyes is to outline everything in black. I'll do the eyebrows while I'm at it since her hair is black. Often with my female models I'll add a bit of color to the eyelids, but Foxglove's pretty au naturel. Next I'll do the lips. Again, I'm not going for a makeup look here, but they should be darker and redder than the overall skin tone. I have artwork I'm referencing for hue, but since it's a color tweaked version of someone else's art, I'm not going to show it here for copyright reasons. Next comes the skin. Since she's half Uthgard and half Wood Elf, she has an unusual coppery complexion, so I'll have to do a bit more mixing. I tend to spend the most time on skin because it needs to look natural, so I do a 4-stage process. First is shadow. This will obviously be the darkest shade. Next, I hit everything that's not in shadow with the normal skin shade. Use a light touch with this. You can always use multiple coats if it doesn't quite cover. Then we hit everything that's directly facing our imaginary light source with the highlight. Once this is completely dry, I smooth things out by mixing a few drops of the base skin tone in some water. Less is more here. You don't want to completely cover all those layers of shade. I use this as a wash, spreading it liberally over all areas of exposed skin. Do be careful around the eyes though. As with any wash, it's important to let this completely dry before moving on. A little droplet of water can ruin a coat of paint. That's the hard part done. Clothing is generally much more simple. I'll be mixing some custom colors, but it's typically one shade per color of the model. Again, we're thinking in layers, so inside first, working our way out. It's okay to leave a bit of primer showing between. Remember, we're representing shadow here, and it often looks cleaner that way. Once the clothing is painted, I'll move on to weapons and the ruins portion of the base. Once I'm satisfied with this, I'll mix up a black wash to bring out the texture of the model a bit more. You'll want to have a very light touch with this unless you happen to be painting a coal miner. Usually 1 drop in about a teaspoon of water is plenty. I'm avoiding areas of skin as they're already shaded to my liking. Once this wash is fully dry, I'll move on to the hair. This one may come out a bit boring on video as we're doing black over black, but again, it's about bringing out the texture. My base coat will be a gloss black, and I'll try to leave a bit of the primer in the gaps between hairs. Once I'm satisfied with this, I'll add a bit of luster to her mane. Not too much, just mixing in a bit of gunmetal into the black where it catches the light. Then I'm going to dry brush this over the existing coat by wiping most of it off and lightly applying it across the grain. I find this is more forgiving with dry brushing. Just make sure you make enough passes not to leave gaps. Finally, I'll do the very base. This isn't strictly necessary, but I like a bit more gloss than the primer here. Once everything is fully dry, I apply my satin finish. Again, light coats, wait until they're fully dry. For durability's sake, I usually do 5 to 7 coats, though definitely if it starts looking hazy when dry, you should stop. It will only get worse from there. Finally, I'll carefully remove my battery cap and as much of the glue as possible, and apply some paint where no one can see it. Not strictly necessary, but your Mini is going to be spending enough time prone, you might as well make it look good from that angle. I'll initial this one, then a few coats of primer, and Foxglove is ready for the battle map. I hope you found this video informative and or entertaining. If so, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Also, I'd love to hear your comments as I know many of you are probably better at this than I am. Thanks for watching!